Hey everybody. We finished with Proverbs 23 last time, so we're going to be starting chapter 24. If I remember correctly, this might be one of my favorite Proverbs, or at least there's a few verses in here that really stick out in my mind. But yeah, let's get started here. So verse 1, be not thou envious against evil men, neither desire to be with them. For their heart studieth destruction, and their lips talk of mischief. So again, another repetitive theme that we see in the scriptures about not desiring the position or the riches of the evil. We look at this world sometimes and we see evil people prospering. We shouldn't be envious of that. We shouldn't be desirous of that. They have their lot in this life. Jesus told that parable about Lazarus and the rich man. And after death, Lazarus goes to heaven, the rich man goes to hell, and the rich man, begging for mercy, is told, you had your, basically saying like the only heaven that evil people will know is this current life, which is over in a moment, blinking of an eye. And this life is the only hell the born again will know, because we're saved, we're redeemed. We get eternity. So if they get this little piece, if they get this little moment, don't be desirous of that. Don't be envious of it. Let them have their cake right now and pity them. They're settling for sewage. They're eating, out of a pig trough, so to speak. And we're going home to a never-ending delicious buffet, and they're giving that up for this momentary pleasure, and yeah, we have to go hungry a little bit, but that's fine. We're gonna get to the end, and the end is coming like that. I'm 38 now, my life's half over. It's been a blink of an eye. It went so fast, and everybody you talk to, everybody who's older than me will say the same thing. My life has gone by so quick. It's a moment and it's gone. So if the rich have their moment, if this is their moment, don't be envious of that. Because, like it says here, their heart studieth destruction, their lips talk of mischief. They have evil on their hearts, they have evil on their mind, and they're going to answer for that. So even if they're successful for the time being, it's a short time, and they've made a bad trade. Verse 3, through wisdom is a house builded, and by understanding it is established, and by knowledge shall the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. That just talks about not being rash, I think, but just, using wisdom and knowledge and understanding to figure things out before you make a move. To it's how a house is built. You don't just start building. You don't just start throwing up walls and roof and siding and then realize, oh man, I didn't put a foundation down. You don't put the walls and the plywood and the siding on and then realize, oh man, we forgot to put the electrical. You have to sit and plan things out. Wisdom and knowledge and understanding considers things beforehand, and then walks in it. So it's just, be wise. And it's not just a house. That's just a metaphor. It's about all things. Everything you endeavor to do, everything you plan, and everything you take steps to achieve or try to do. Think about things. Use wisdom. Use understanding. Use knowledge before just moving into a thing. It's foolish to just rush into something. Verse 5, a wise man is strong, yea, a man of knowledge increaseth strength. So I don't think that's referring to physical strength, but more probably endurance and willpower through wisdom and knowledge, especially as you know the truth. Like, it just increases faith and hope, and the Lord, because He is truth. When you know Him, it increases strength. It gives you that enduring perseverance. Verse 6, for by wise counsel thou shalt make thy war, and in multitude of counselors there is safety. So that's a key verse. Specifically, and I'll stop there at 6 after I talk about this, but specifically, like, so as a born again Christian, we are trying to live our lives by the light of the Holy Scriptures. We're measuring and thinking through and testing our motives in all things to see, am I being obedient to the Scriptures here? Am I living a righteous life? And it's not out of duty, it's out of love. That's our joy, because we know that's where pleasure is. We know that's where joy is. So we're constantly examining, going, am I walking in the Spirit here? Am I doing what is scripturally right? Now that is the case for all the born again. That's how we live our lives. Those who love God obey him, it says. And it's a loving obedience. It's our desire. It's our joy. It's our pleasure, like I said. But there's times where we get confused. There's times where you're not sure what the Lord wants you to do. You're not sure what the biblical, righteous, holy thing to do. You're in like this gray area and you can't figure it out. You can't find clear scriptural references to guide you, to point you in the right direction. And so you're left kind of wavering. And what makes this even worse is sometimes if you desire one choice more than another, that really clouds your discernment. As you're sitting trying to figure out, what would the Lord have me to do? Desire will often imitate the voice of the Lord in your heart. Desire will often sound and masquerade itself as the Lord. So you think you're getting instruction from the Scriptures. You think you're getting righteous biblical instruction to go this way, and it's really your heart deceiving you. And so whenever there's strong desire, whenever you desire something, or just even if you're unclear, like there's an option before you and you're not sure what the righteous decision is, go to your counselors. Go to men and women of God that you trust, that have shown that they love the Lord, that they also are seeking to live in that light of the Scriptures. And ask them to look at it to see if they can see something you don't, to see if they have some sort of biblical wisdom or instruction that you're not seeing. And that's where that safety comes, safety in the multitude of counselors. Get different opinions from several different brothers and sisters in the faith. Present the situation to them, give them as many details as possible, and like I say, if you're unclear on something, that's important, especially if you desire something. If you don't have clear scripture instruction, but you're just going, man, I really think this is the path the Lord wants for me. Realize this could just be my desires pulling me off track. This could be my desires leading me astray. Bring the situation to your counselors where there is safety. Let them look at it. Let them examine it and see, because a lot of times we're blinded by that desire. We're blinded by that motive. We're blinded by that craving that we want to be true. We want that to be the right path. And so we're completely blind to the possibility of error. We think that's the right way to go. When you're blind and you don't know where your next step is, it is incredibly wise to get somebody who can see to tell you where to step. So you go to somebody who doesn't have that blind spot, that doesn't have that desire, that craving blinding them, that can look at it objectively and can say, look, brother, that's not correct. Here's the right way to go. Here's the right decision to make. And then and get it from a multitude, because it's going to be hard for that one opinion to overcome your desire. But if you get a multitude of brothers and sisters all saying the same thing, saying, hey, this is the way, walk in it, chances are you're being deceived and you're being led astray. And that's a hard lesson we have to learn sometimes through experience. We're so persuaded, so convinced in our own minds that that's the right way. We ignore our counselors and we go, they just don't understand. They're not seeing the whole picture. I got it figured out. So there are issues like that where you're not going to have a clear biblical viewpoint. You're not gonna know. There's not a specific scripture telling you what to do on the situation, and you're going to have confusion, like, I really don't know what the Lord wants me to do here. I don't know what the right thing to do is. So go to the counselors, ask them. And again, I emphasize, if your desires if you have a strong desire pulling you one way, then it's incredibly important to get that counsel, because the heart is deceitfully wicked. It's more deceitful than Satan. It's more deceitful than the world. Your own heart, your own desires and cravings of the flesh, are more dangerous than anything else in this world, and anything else in the spiritual realm. It's deceitful above all things. Your heart will masquerade as the voice of the Lord and will lead you astray. So when you don't have that clear scripture, go to counselors, ask them for advice. Wise, holy counselors. Don't go to lost people. Don't go to people with the same desires and cravings as you. Go to mature believers in the faith. And if they're all saying the same thing, then you can rest safe in that. There's safety in a multitude of counselors. You can go, okay, that's got to be the right way. Even though my desires are leading me this way, all these biblical saints are saying, no, it's this way. I'm going to go with them. So that's what that's getting at there in verse 6, with the wise counselors and the multitude of counselors. So that's where we'll stop, and Lord willing, we'll pick up in verse 7 next time. All right, I love you. We'll talk to you later. Hey, everybody. We're continuing on in Proverbs Chapter 24. We read through verse 6, so we're going to pick up here in verse 7. It says, "Wisdom is too high for a fool. He openeth not his mouth in the gate. He that deviseth to do evil shall be called a mischievous person. The thought of foolishness is sin, and the scorner is an abomination to men." The thought of foolishness is sin. So that just ties in with like what the Lord revealed in the New Testament when Jesus said, you've heard it said that you shouldn't do this, and then he said, but I tell you, he who looks with adultery has committed, or looks with lust has committed adultery in his heart, and he who hates his brother without cause has committed murder. So it's just showing that the Lord is the judge of thoughts, in not just actions. Which is something I think that a lot of people miss. Like, a lot of people, the scriptures say in another place that every man will proclaim his own goodness. And, sorry about that, my phone was kind of off-centered here. What was I saying? But, yeah, they talk about how each man will proclaim his own goodness, and if most people that you would talk to would define themselves as good, because they've set up this standard of goodness that doesn't match God's standard. They fail to realize that God has a standard that you must meet. What they do is they compare themselves to others. They set a standard in their heart. They look at rapists and murderers and burglars, or depending on their level of morality. Some people will look down on the drug user or the drunkard, or even, they'll set ridiculous standards like, oh, that person doesn't go to church, or that person's not married, or whatever the case may be. They look at other people and then establish their own goodness. They set that standard. They say, here's what I think is good. That person doesn't meet it. I do, therefore I'm good. But they fail to realize that thoughts are judged. Thoughts reveal the desires, the motives of the heart. What you think about is who you really are in the heart. It's God puts checks in place to prevent you from acting on those. He causes you to fear society, or to fear repercussion, or to fear how you'll look in other people's eyes, and so you don't do what you actually think about. But you think about lust, you think about anger. You cuss the guy out in your heart that cuts you off in traffic. You look at a person's outward appearance and you think, oh, that person's gross, or you think something evil in your heart, and that's who you really are. And God is going to judge the thoughts of the hearts. And scriptures in another place say that the thoughts of the heart are only evil continually. Every thought that we have outside of Christ is a selfish thought. When you trace that thought back, there's some root of selfishness, some root of pride, some root of unholiness. It's an unholy thought. Every thought we have from our waking moment is selfish and greedy, and just done for the approval of man. There's a wickedness in us. And this is saying that even our thoughts, the thought of foolishness is sin. And one sin is rebellion against God, is high treason against the creator of the universe, and will be punished with everlasting punishment. That's how severe it is to sin against the Almighty God. So people fail to realize that your thoughts will be judged. And another scripture talks about every idle word will give an account. So idle words, the words you use in private, the words you use when you're just in a casual, relaxed atmosphere, when you're not trying to put on a show for people. Like, just listen to how people talk, listen to the way people treat each other, with spite and bitterness and selfishness, the anger and the viciousness that is in people's talk. That's going to be judged as well. If thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small. Here's 11 and 12, and I think I'll stop there because these verses have always stuck out to me, especially like in the realm of I've always tied these two verses into evangelism. It says, if thou forbear to deliver them that are drawn unto death, and those that are ready to be slain, if thou sayest, behold, we knew it not, doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it? And he that keepeth thy soul, doth not he know it? And shall not he render to every man according to his works? So, as the born-again saints, we see people every day that don't have Christ. And it's, regardless of what they call themselves, it's evident in their life. You see the fruit coming out of them. And you know they don't know Christ. Their actions, their words, their behavior, it reveals which camp they're in, which kingdom they belong to. If you belong to the kingdom of light, that's going to reflect. It's going to show. And if you don't, that's going to show. And so we see people every day. Those people are the ones in verse 11 here that are drawn unto death. They're ready to be slain. Jonathan Edwards, in his sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, talks about how it's like the Lord has his bow drawn and the arrow pointed at them. Wrath is ready to be revealed. You never know when a person's going to take their last breath. And in the next moment, the moment after they take their last breath, they're entering into the judgment seat. They are drawn unto death. They're going to face the unmitigated wrath of God, the just wrath, because sin deserves that wrath. And we know it. We know that. And so it says here, if we pretend that we don't, we say, oh, we didn't know. Does not he who ponders the heart consider it? The Lord knows. The Lord knows you have the answer. We have the answer. I'm including myself in this too, because I don't do evangelism like I should. But we know that the people we're talking to could die at any moment, and they're going to face the wrath of God. We know that. Their death, so to speak, is on our hands. Their blood is on our hands. We're watchmen on the wall. We see the wrath coming. And if we don't warn them, because we're afraid of how they'll react, we're afraid that they'll dislike us, we're afraid that they'll consider us weird or whatever, we hold back. That's on us. We're going to be held accountable for that. It's like watching people march towards a cliff, and watching blind people, blind and ignorant, marching towards their death, marching towards that cliff, and we're just standing back silent, not saying anything, just going, well, it's not. I don't want anybody to think I'm weird. I don't want anybody to hear me screaming, hey, turn around, go the other way. But that's our responsibility. And so these verses, 24, 11, and 12, are strong verses to be used for evangelism. They're to spur on evangelism. You have the answer. You have the truth. You have the warning. Yeah, you can't persuade people. You can't convince them. But you can warn them. You can sound that warning. You can let them know you're on the path to death. You're on the path to wrath. Please turn and go the other way. That's our responsibility. And so it's really fearful, shameful, humbling, debasing to just think that we don't say anything. I was thinking the other day, like, I've lived in the same place here for 10, 12 years, I don't know how long, but I've never had a conversation with my neighbors, people that I work with, because, you're afraid, I lose my job, we can't talk about religion at work, and my own family members, who, I think I've tried to witness to all of them, but then, I've gone silent the last few years. It's like, that's on us. And the Lord, how do I say this? Because there is a tenderness with God too, but we are required. That's the whole purpose of being called into the kingdom. That's the reason you're saved, and don't immediately go to heaven. An alarm going off here. But the reason we're saved and remain here on earth is because we're supposed to be his witnesses. We're supposed to tell others what's been revealed to us. We're supposed to warn them. We have miraculously had our eyes opened. We were marching towards that cliff as well. That bow with the arrow pointed at us was drawn towards us. And by the grace of God, he has opened our eyes. He has enlightened us to see the danger and to turn away from it. And so now it's our responsibility to warn others who can't see. It's our responsibility to tell them you're heading towards danger. So that's what I always think about when I read these verses here in 11 and 12. Just very convicting, motivating verses for evangelism. But that's where we'll stop. That was verse 12. Lord willing, we'll pick up in 13 next time. All right, I love you guys. We'll talk to you later. Hey, everybody. We're continuing on in Proverbs Chapter 24. We read through verse 12, so we're going to pick up here in verse 13. My son, eat thou honey, because it is good, and the honeycomb, which is sweet to thy taste. So shall the knowledge of wisdom be unto thy soul, when thou hast found it. Then there shall be a reward, and thy expectation shall not be cut off. It's interesting that the scriptures compare wisdom to honey. There's a spiritual flesh comparison going on there. Honey would have been, like, if you think about it, back in the day, that would have been the greatest thing that you could find to eat. Like, you find a honeycomb, it would just be like, before refined sugars and sweets and things like that, honey would have been the sweetest thing you could get, I guess. Besides, like, maybe a grape or something, but the honey would have been just a very satisfying, like, pleasure, like a really joyous treat. And so the scriptures here are saying that knowledge and the knowledge of wisdom is like honey to your soul. So the same way that honey to the flesh brings a joyous, pleasurable satisfaction, knowledge of wisdom brings that same satisfaction to the soul. And that's very experimentally or experientially known to Christians, to the born again. When you're studying the scriptures, when you're reading through the word, and the Lord enlightens a verse or a word or an idea, and just shows you a truth, shows you a reality in the scriptures that you were previously unaware of. It is like discovering a treat. It's like discovering something sweet to the soul. It brings refreshment and joy and pleasure. It's an overwhelming joy. It's the only way to describe it is glory. It brings a light of glory to your soul. It's this internal enlightenment where the light of God shines down upon you and just brings new revelation to your eyes. And you experience this on a internal perspective. You just get this new wisdom from the Lord, and it's overwhelming. It's fantastic. It's why we hunger and thirst for the scriptures, because it's addictive to the soul. It's a treasure for the soul to have the scriptures in front of us, to dig and to search for that treasure, to look for that honeycomb, so to speak. And when the Lord gives it, it's just very, very pleasing. Verse 15, lay not wait, O wicked man, against the dwelling of the righteous. Spoil not his resting place. For a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again, but the wicked shall fall into mischief. So I think it's a common verse about just endurance, the endurance of the saints to fall 7 times and rise up again. The Lord causes us to persevere, to keep going. Verse 17, rejoice not when thine enemy falleth, and let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth, lest the Lord see it, and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. That's a key principle that really gets fleshed out in the New Testament quite a bit, about loving your enemies, praying for those who use you and persecute you, doing good to those who hate you and want to spoil you, like the word says here. It didn't say spoil, did it? I don't know where I got the word spoil. But the idea is, if a person makes themselves your enemy, because a Christian shouldn't view, or they shouldn't be the enemy of anybody else. They shouldn't put themselves in that position. But we will have people that are enemies of us. There will be people that set themselves against us, that slander us, badmouth us, lie about us, seek to cause us to stumble and fall, persecute us, hate the gospel, so they hate us. And you're going to have those people, your enemies, so to speak. And we're told to love these people, to pray for them, and right here, to not rejoice when they fall. Like, the Lord is our avenger. That's what the word says. It says that seek not vengeance, because vengeance belongs to the Lord. The Lord will do justly. He will defend you. He will persecute your persecutors. And so, like, if you see your enemies coming into hardships, if you see the hand of the Lord against your enemy, there ought to be no rejoicing. There ought to be a fearful trembling, knowing the severity of the judgment of God, knowing who it is that they've trifled with. And I'm not speaking about us, but God. We're his representatives. And so, like, if you see your enemy coming under the wrath of God, under that mighty hand of God, to rejoice in that is to show a spoiled heart. To take pleasure in that is to show a very un-Christian, un-Christ-like personality trait. So that's going to displease the Lord, it says. To see that in you, it's going to reveal a bitterness, a wrongness in your heart, a sin in your heart, and the Lord's going to deal with that. You're his first priority as his child, and his entire plan, his entire work is to work out righteousness in your heart, to work out holiness in your heart. And so if you're taking pleasure in the defeat of your enemies, if you're rejoicing in the wrath of God coming down upon your enemies, judgment of God, that shows something wrong with your heart. And the Lord's going to relent, the scripture says right here. He's going to turn his wrath from that person, and he's going to turn his attention to you. The attention is going to be your heart. You've got something that needs to be worked out. You're the priority. All things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. And he chastises those he loves. So he works chastisement for us in order to conform us to his image, to create holiness and righteousness in us. And it's a very unholy and unrighteous thing to take pleasure in the punishment or the failure or the falling of your enemy. It shows the wrong heart, because again, they view you, they dislike you, and so they present themselves as your enemy, but you shouldn't be their enemy. Like, you should be friendly and kind and generous and benevolent to all people, and so, like, you ought to be the enemy of nobody. There might be people that set themselves up as your enemy, but you should be enemy of no one. A Christian is supposed to be a man of peace, of gentleness, meekness, kindness, humility. These are all Christian traits. So again, to take pleasure in the downfall of somebody else just shows a wickedness in your own heart that would have to be remedied. I'll do a little bit more here. Verse 19, fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious at the wicked. This is a verse that's come up a lot in my mind here lately, just because it seems like, especially like if you follow the news, it seems like you're seeing the prosperity of the wicked on a grander scale. It looks like the wicked are winning. We're seeing, in America especially, we're seeing the agenda of evil prosper in this nation. We're seeing abominations and wickedness celebrated and promoted on a national stage through the media, through Hollywood, through politics. And yes, it's been that way for years, and it's been gradually getting worse, but it just seems to have exploded here lately, where we're really just seeing evil people prosper. We're seeing evil people seem to get victories, seem to win the court battles, seem to gain power. And it says right here, do not fret because of it. Don't worry about it. Don't be envious at the wicked. It says, for there shall be no reward to the evil man. The candle of the wicked shall be put out. And there's another scripture that talks about the Lord has set them in slippery places. There's David had this problem. There's a psalm that talks about how he saw the wicked prospering and it grieved him. And then he went to the house of the Lord and remembered that their time is short, that judgment is coming, that they're going to face the wrath of God. There's that famous saying that for the wicked, this life is the only heaven they'll ever know. They get these 70, 80 years. If they prosper that entire 70, 80 years, that's fine. That's all they get. And then it's done, and it's done in a vapor. It goes by so quick, it's over. But for the saved, for the born again, this 70, 80 years, this life is the only hell we'll ever know. This is as bad as it gets. And we see that in the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. The rich man had all of his abundance and rewards here on earth. Lazarus suffered and sat at the door begging and had wounds that the dogs would lick his wounds. They both died. Lazarus enters into eternal glory. The rich man goes to eternal suffering and condemnation. And eternity, think about that. In the light, this life is the blink of an eye. It's like a dream. When you remember, like when you're in a dream, it seems so real. It seems lengthy. It seems like there's an expanse of time going on, and then you wake up from it and you realize it was just a moment, and it fades quickly into the distance, and you go into real life. And that's kind of like, for me, like an analogy of what this life is compared to eternity. We're going to wake up from this life one day when we take our last breath, and we're going to be in eternity. And this life will fade like a dream. It'll fade like a distant memory. It'll seem like it was just over in a second. While we're in it, we got this expanse of 70, 80 years. But when we wake up from it, it's going to just be like, that was just a blink of an eye. It was a vapor. And so if the rich prosper now, if the wicked prosper now, that's fine. We should pity that. If that's all they get, they're settling for pig slop. They're settling for vanity. They're settling for nothing. They can have eternal glory, so we ought to pity them and weep for them and plead with them to trade their riches for eternal glory. But we shouldn't fret. And that's what the scriptures say here, fret, to get anxious or worry about. We shouldn't have that. We shouldn't be envious or jealous or desirous of what they have. It's going to come to an end. The candle of the wicked shall be put out. They're going to be snuffed out. It's done. But we will live forever. So you just have to keep that in mind. Like when, and it's really hard. Like for me, I went through a period with the media for a year where I was it grieved me so much to see the just constant lying and constant wickedness. And I just wanted justice. I wanted vengeance. I wanted retribution. I wanted the Lord to smite them, to bring accountability. But we have to remember, let them have this life. This life is a vapor. It's over and done. We're just aliens and pilgrims passing through to proclaim the gospel on our way to glory. So let them have this life. But anyways, that was verse 20. We'll stop there, and then Lord willing, we'll pick up in 21 next time. All right, I love you guys. We'll talk to you later. Hey, everybody. We're continuing on in Proverbs chapter 24. We read through verse 20, so we're going to pick up here in verse 21. My son, fear thou the Lord and the king, and meddle not with them that are given to change. Interesting verse. I wonder why there's a tie-in between fearing the Lord and the king and not meddling with them that are given to change. What's the significance of the king and the Lord there with those given to change? You know what I'm saying? Something I haven't thought that through, but maybe you guys want to think it through. There's some wisdom there to be found. But I'll just take it as two individual sections here. Fear thou the Lord and the king. You know, that's that reverence, that honor. Makes me think of that verse in the New Testament, give honor to those whom honor is due. And it's talking about authorities or kings or powers or rulers. I struggle with that a little bit in America because politicians, based on the constitutional republic form of government that we've set up, they're not authorities, they're not rulers, they're supposed to be representatives. Like the Constitution states that we, the people, are the authority. Each individual is, in a sense, their own government, under the law of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Like those are the boundaries by which we're supposed to be governed, that the piece of paper, the ideology, and then each individual is their own free sovereign nation, able to do whatever they want within those boundaries. And we simply elect politicians to be our representatives, to create statutes and laws and defend the nation and spend money and raise taxes and arrest criminals and whatnot. But that's so, like, are they really authority figures? Because it'd be like, you know, I don't know if you're at work and you're on a committee, you know, you're on some sort of board or committee, I can't say that word, committee of, let's say there's 12 of you, and you vote and pick one person to be your representative, to bring your plans and to bring your ideas before the CEO. Is that person your authority? Or are they your employee? Because they're supposed to do what you tell them to do. They're supposed to represent you. And that's what politicians are. Even our president is supposed to be our representative head in the executive branch. So it's like, where's authority come in? Just because they have the guns? Just because they have the power? I tried to argue this with a brother one time, and I said, like, in your own home, you are the authority in your home. You're the head of your family. What if somebody comes in with a gun and starts dictating to you, you know, saying, no, your wife's going to go over to the kitchen right now and cook me a meal, and your kids are going to bed right now, and you're going to go sit on that couch. Just because they have the gun, does that make them the authority? Does it transfer that power? Are you no longer the head of your household? Now because somebody came in with a weapon, they're the head of the household? So it's kind of like that's what we have in America, where, you know, we're supposed to be, and we're still announced to be, we're still proclaimed to be, our politicians at least offer lip service to the Constitution. We're supposed to be a constitutional republic, where regardless of anybody else's opinions, we're not a democracy. A democracy is mob rule. 51% of my neighbors decide I can't have a Buick. You know, in a democracy, that's the law then, because the majority rules. I can't have a Buick. In a constitutional republic, I, as an individual, am guaranteed inalienable rights. I'm promised to be protected, to have my rights defended and honored. So I have the right to buy whatever kind of car I want. If I have a Buick, it doesn't matter if 99.9% of the population says you can't have a Buick. My individual inalienable rights are protected under the Constitution. So that's the form of government we're supposed to have. So congressmen and senators and all the bureaucrats and they're all supposed to work for us as our representatives. We tell our local school board what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to do it. We tell our local state officials or even city officials what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to do it. They're supposed to represent us. And if they don't, they get fired. They're our employees, not our authorities. So it's hard to like when the scriptures talk about honoring the king and honoring authority, it's really hard to figure out, like, well, what does that mean? Just because they have the power, does that make them the authority? Just because they hold the guns, does that... I'm supposed to be the authority of my life in America, under the rule of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I can't do anything that would interfere with your rights, but as an individual, I'm supposed to be guaranteed my rights. I'm supposed to be my own sovereign nation, kind of, sort of. A united republic, a United States of America. You know, that's the way it's supposed to be. So with that said, you know, who do I honor then? Just because they had the guns? Just because they took a position of power? Just because everybody else around me seems to be laying down and just saying, well, let them have control? Does that make it so? But then you think, like, all governments are really formed through dictatorship. You know, like Caesar wasn't just. He came and took power. Or Nebuchadnezzar came and took power. So we're expected to be obedient to them, even though they took power. So it's just a weird thing. Plus, then you think, like, America started in an ungodly fashion. We started in rebellion to the king. We started out as a rebellious nation in violation of Romans 13. We're supposed to be obedient to our king, and here we're supposed to give fear the king, give that reverent awe to the king. But we rebelled against what's his face, King George, and we weren't supposed to do that biblically. That was an unbiblical act. It was a sinful act. So we started as a sinful nation. So you add that wrinkle to it, it gets really, really hard to figure out, like, who authority is in the land. I suppose it boils down to, yes, I'm supposed to love and respect everybody, but do I submit to everybody? Do I give control just because they have a gun or just because they have the power to lock me up? Does that make them authority? Like, I don't know. It's a really weird thing to balance out, because then you also look at, like, well, even if it is an abuse of power, what can we do as Christians? We can't violently rebel. That's unbiblical as well. We're to do violence to no man. We're supposed to love our enemies and turn the other cheek, and if somebody's robbing us, we're supposed to give them our coat as well, you know. So if these representatives we put into position are abusing their power and robbing us through taxation or unjust laws or whatever, I suppose we're supposed to be submissive and humble. So it's just this really weird thing. Like, I still haven't figured it all out. I don't know, in today's society, with the form of government that we have in America, how a Christian is supposed to relate to that. Who's the king that I'm supposed to fear in America? You know, because realistically, the Constitution is the king. That's the way it's supposed to be. The ideology of the Constitution. Individual freedoms guaranteed within the parameters of the Constitution and Bill of Rights. That's the king. So, like, I don't know. It's a really difficult thing. And I've had a hard time wrestling out just because of how much, like, especially the last couple of years, it's crazy how it's amped up. It's the government is so immoral. Constantly lying, like literally nothing that you hear come from the leftist politicians and the media is accurate. None of it is true, and 99% of what the conservative side, what the Republicans say is not true. It's like there's just corruption and it's so wicked and unjust, and it's like, how are we as Christians supposed to act in this time and age? We're living in these perilous times. I know we're not supposed to let our love grow cold. We're supposed to love and pray and spread the gospel and be passive and submissive. but at the same time, we're supposed to expose the unfruitful works of darkness. We're supposed to call evil evil. We're supposed to, I suppose, just try to live a quiet, peaceable, separate life. And that's the best we can do, I suppose. But it's just really difficult, and it's always perplexing here. Like, how do I fear and honor the king? Because who is the king in America? My understanding is that we, the people, are the king. And as long as our government still offers that pretense, even though they don't act like it, they still say we're a constitutional republic. Until they say, hey, that's out the window, we're now an oligarchy. We're now a bureaucratic fascist system. We're the authority. Until there's actually a public declaration like that, I suppose we're supposed to live on the assumption that we're still a constitutional republic in which we, the people, are the authority. So it's, like I say, it's just a really perplexing thing. I do know that there's guiding principles of peace and love and gentleness and humility and meekness for the Christian. And so we have to maintain those in spite of wicked abuses. It just gets to, it's like, it's just a really difficult thing for me to work out in my mind here. Meddle not with them that are given to change. People who are fickle, flip-flop, especially, well, not especially, but we read about people in the New Testament who are blown about by every wind of doctrine, change on a dime. I suppose that shows a lack of understanding, a lack of scriptural understanding. So people that are fickle, that are prone to change, are not to be meddled with. I guess we're not supposed to. I don't what the word meddle would mean. Meddle is to interfere, like not to get in their way, I guess, because it's just going to be. Well, let's read the next verse because it says, 22. For their calamity shall rise suddenly, and who knoweth the ruin of them both? Who's them both? The one that's fickle and the person who's meddling with them? So I guess it's just saying avoid that, stay away from people who are constantly changing. I'm sure we all know people like that. There's emotional chaos with people who flip and flop and go back and forth, and it is just a chaotic lifestyle. It says their calamity will rise suddenly. So that's like seeing something about to explode. You just want to keep your distance. Like, whoa, I'm not even going to go meddle with that. I'm not going to mess with that. It's dangerous. These things also belong to the wise. It is not good to have respect of persons in judgment. So that's just, don't show favoritism in judgment. When you're trying to determine the truth of a matter, which is what judgment is, I think, when you're trying to find what's righteous and good and holy in a situation, when you're trying to find the truth between a dispute or an argument or a situation, whatever it is, you don't want to have respect of persons. The moment you favor somebody, there's immediately bias in your heart. Even if you try not to, subconsciously, you're going to favor them. You're going to believe them. So it just gets really, really difficult to discern righteousness when you have favoritism. So the scriptures are clear on that, and it's a repetitive theme throughout the scriptures to not show favoritism, to have no respect of persons, to not sway one way or another, but try to remain neutral when hearing out a matter. That was verse 23. I went really long on that king part, so I apologize about that. Went off topic too, but we'll stop at 23, and then Lord willing, we'll pick up in 24 next time. All right, I love you guys. We'll talk to you later. Hey everyone. We're continuing on in Proverbs Chapter 24. We read through verse 23, so we'll pick up here in verse 24. It says, He that saith unto the wicked, Thou art righteous, him shall the people curse, nations shall abhor them. But to them that rebuke him shall be delight, and a good blessing shall come upon them. So that's just about integrity, just not praising the wicked, not being a respecter of persons or fearful of a person's position, but just calling a spade, basically, Yeah. Verse 26, every man shall kiss his lips that giveth a right answer. Prepare thy work without, and make it fit for thyself in the field, and afterwards build thine house. I think that's just talking about being wise, in preparation and plan. Like, one thing I've discovered is, like, people are full of ideas. Everybody's got ideas and hopes and designs and plans in their head, but nothing gets done until it's actually, like, organized and scheduled, until you actually prepare the steps to do something. Otherwise, it just stays in the what do they call it? The ethereal, is that what it's called? The imagination, the speculation. You talk about things. People, like I say, people have all sorts of ideas. Like, a majority of conversation is people talking about what they would like to do. But until you actually sit down and put pen to paper and be detailed, organized. Like, this is what I'm gonna need. Here's the steps I'm gonna take. Here's what it's going to require, and until you get that all laid out, nothing happens. And so I think that's what it's saying here. Like, if you're planning on doing something, like in this case, building a house, prepare first. Think about what you're going to need. Design blueprints. Get the materials. Get a detailed step-by-step instruction. Otherwise, it won't get done. It's just going to sit in your head. And I've learned that with a lot of things, man, from the simplistic things like just your daily routine, wanting to get to the gym every day and failing to do so. It's because you don't have a schedule. To planning a vacation or wanting to go do something that don't get done because you don't actually sit and plan it out. To actually, like, people building businesses and stuff, getting a business model going. You actually have to sit down and plan things out or they won't get done. And so there's just, and that's why the Proverbs are called wisdom literature. There's just so much wisdom on such a variety of things in life. Like that's just a wise thing to do, to prepare beforehand, to think about things beforehand. Verse 28, be not a witness against thy neighbor without cause, and deceive not with thy lips. I read that as, snitches get stitches, so to speak. But not really the stitches, but like, don't, mind your business. Don't be a witness against your neighbor without a cause. If there's a cause, if you're called upon like to testify or if there's a dangerous situation and you need to get involved, but otherwise, just mind your own business. Like, there's a lot of undue stress put on people by getting involved in everybody else's business. Seek to live a quiet, peaceable life. Stay in your own lane. Mind your own business. Don't get involved in other people's affairs without a cause. Say not, I will do so to him as he hath done to me. I will render to the man according to his work. So that's just about vengeance, I think. So and again, that's a common theme repeated throughout the New Testament. It's one of Jesus's pillared teachings, is to love our enemies, to forgive those who do wrong against us, to pray for those who spitefully use us, to not seek vengeance, but to lay down our lives for others. If somebody robs us of a coat, to give them our tunic also. If somebody compels you to go a mile, go two. To give to those who ask, and it's just a life of laying down your own desires and your own selfishness for the sake of others. That's the Christian ethic. And so we see that here in the Old Testament in Proverbs 24-29 there. Verse 30, I went by the field of the slothful, and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. And lo, it was all grown over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. Then I saw and considered it well. I looked upon it, and received instruction. yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one that travelleth, and thy want as an armed man. Interesting that he breaks out kind of into a little, like a little story there at the end, combines those last 4 or 5 verses to tell the story about laziness. He says, I considered a lazy man, a slothful man. Just a little bit of laziness can wreak havoc. It destroys the fields, and farmers would know that, especially. Like, I remember my grandpa was a dairy farmer, and just watching him always working. His entire life was work. He'd get up in the morning and have breakfast, and he's out in the field, dealing with the cows, and he's out there till night. Come in, have supper, and maybe watch a movie with his wife, and then it's to bed, and then repeat the same thing. No days off. Like, I remember, I'm assuming it was him that told me, because I didn't know any other farmers, but that a cow needs to be milked every day. There's no vacation. There's no time off. If you can't get somebody to milk your cows, you have to be there. That cow must be milked daily. And so a little sleep, just a little slumber, just taking a day off, is going to wreak havoc. So it always got me to really appreciate the work ethic of the farmer. The slothful man doesn't want to work, and I understand that, because I'm by nature a lazy person. That's sinful. Like, I don't want to have to get up and do work every day either. But if you slack off, if you stumble, like in my case, if I take a day off or whatever, your bills are going to suffer. Things are going to start to unravel. So, and again, this is another common theme throughout the Proverbs about diligence. Just being there's something righteous and upright and noble about a hard-working, diligent person. It's admirable. And especially like when their heart isn't fixated on gain and greed. They're not workaholics for greed's sake. They're just diligent in their business. They know that it's the appropriate and right thing to do to work hard. There's something noble and upright about that, and that's what the scriptures are talking about here. The antithesis of that is laziness and slothfulness, and we look at that and we see there's something off-putting about that. There's something unholy about that. So to be diligent, to be laborious, to be upright in your workings is a good, wholesome, holy thing to do, and the scriptures encourage us in that. So, but that's the end of chapter 24. So, Lord willing, we will pick up in chapter 25 next time. All right, I love you guys. We'll talk to you later.